Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first Three-Pillar Academy digital series this fall. We are excited to have Vince Pearson with us this evening. He's the manager of diversity, inclusion, and minor league baseball. Vince, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. I know you spent a little bit of time at the conference office before you transitioned down to Florida, where you're now managing the development and implementation of programs, activities, partnerships, and other strategic endeavors for the minor league baseball diversity initiative. It sounds like you have your hands full with all of that.
Most definitely, but it's very fulfilling. It's a great opportunity to really create a lasting impact, and I always tell anyone who asks, it's a perfect marriage of my passion and what a profession could be. So I'm in a really good spot.
Great. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your role and kind of what you do?
Okay. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background on myself. So I'm from Virginia, born and raised in Virginia. I attended Virginia State University, where I earned a degree in sports management. And then, like you said, after earning that degree, I went and joined the conference office, the Colonial Athletic Association, where I worked in compliance and student athlete services. So similar to what you try to do, create programs to try and, engage and enhance the student athlete experience. That's what I did with the Colonial Athletic Association. However, attached to that was compliance. And I absolutely love and completely understand, and I think that the foundation of knowledge that I got working in compliance was so necessary. But honestly, I was 22 years old, and compliance was not the job in sports that I thought that I was going to have. And then the student athlete portion was so small for me that I really thought, why not take a leap of faith, give it a shot, getting into a job in sports that's really something I can be passionate about. So that's what got me to, I went to the University of Central Florida to pursue my graduate degrees in sport business and business. And that's what landed me in minor league baseball after graduation, after some serious divine intervention. I landed with minor league baseball. So now my role is basically anything that moves the needle for our diversity initiative. I want to be the lifeblood for, and I was kind of brought on board to do that. I can remember sitting in my interview across from our president and CEO, Pat O'Connor, and he says, I need the person in this role to wake up, eat, sleep, and breathe, and go to bed diversity and inclusion. And I said, that's good, because you're going to have to be patient with me on the whole baseball thing. With diversity and inclusion, I'm your guy. So I came in, and it was kind of a blank slate, which, I can remember being really excited as I prepared for my first day. And then I got in the office, I got through orientation and a few meetings, and I was like, wow, what in the world am I supposed to do now? Because figuring out the diversity and inclusion space in sports or any other sector of industry is it's challenging. It's oftentimes very new. It's sometimes approached very sensitively, rightfully so. But we had a very engaged and very determined senior staff, and they've really been pushing me to say, Vince, we need you to push the envelope on this. I have their support, both financially for programs and really morally, just, they'll speak for the impact that this can have. So we've developed several programs. One of the first is our workforce diversity report. That actually puts us in a position to know who we are from a racial and gender demographic standpoint. I think that that's one common, I won't say a common mistake, but if you think about wanting to do better with diversity and inclusion, you ought to know where you are now. And so that's one of the first things that we put in place was a very accurate and detailed report that would allow us to collect information on, who we are as an industry. And to take a step back, we have 160 clubs. So the central office in St. Petersburg, Florida, we have about 55 staff members. And when I came on board, it was probably 45. So we're growing. But we see our impact being in the 160 communities that our teams play. So, we see it as a really big opportunity to impact those communities, but at the same time, that's where we want to focus our efforts in understanding who we are. So we got the racial and demographic makeup for our clubs, and that way 5 years from now, we can look back and say, we said we wanted to do better, we set goals, and now we're making progress towards those goals.
Well, and it sounds like you've had some experience prior to this doing publications and research for racial and gender report card assessment. So this kind of just meshed in with some of your previous experiences.
Definitely. And bringing that experience and that's what I did with Dr. Lapchick and the Institute for Diversity and Ethics in Sports. We did racial and gender report cards for pretty much if you were playing pro sports, we were going to analyze your staff. And we got the signing or the blessing of each league that we analyzed. The difference there is Dr. Lapchick and his group, they post report cards, and it's very public. It's posted on ESPN, some of these. So, we have the benefit of doing it internally first and seeing where we are, understanding who we are. I think that's such an important first step. And also, because we're doing it in-house, we have the leverage to be able to really be sure that our information is really accurate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's helpful as benchmarks and how you look to grow, your program.
Absolutely. So we want to use that information to set our goals, because it'd be difficult to say where we want to go if we don't really understand where we are. So we have that information now. And then one of the areas that we see ourselves really being able to create a quick impact is with our hiring practices. So if we could find a way to encourage more women and minorities to learn about minor league baseball as an industry, but then also to pursue careers in our field, I think that will allow us to, see some impact on our workforce. And then naturally, as we become a more inclusive environment altogether, we'll see the culture shift. And I think that's kind of what diversity and inclusion is about. It's not necessarily saying that we have a problem here, but it's addressing culture to ensure that there is an environment that allows for difference to exist and prosper. And so that's what we're working towards. So we have one of the programs that I think is going to be our flagship program is our FIELD program. And FIELD stands for Fostering Inclusion Through Education and Leadership Development. This past year, we brought in 27 students from 18 different colleges and universities for a week-long program in St. Petersburg, Florida, where everything from visiting ballparks to executive speaking panels, resume workshops and interviewing tips. Justine Siegel, who is the first female to coach at the major league level, was brought in, and she was our keynote speaker. The idea is a full immersion into the business of baseball. We want the group to walk away having experience. It's almost, you think about a homestand in baseball where you might play, 10 straight home games. We almost want to set it up to where it's almost like your first homestand. It's nonstop, it's content packed, it's experiential. So you can leave and say, boy, that was a lot. I think I'd never want to work in baseball again. Or you can leave and say, this was really a great experience for me. I had no idea I could be this much fulfilled in a career in baseball. I'd like to learn more. And I think both of those things are wins for us, because what we see as an issue is lack of exposure and awareness more so than lack of interest. If you experience our industry, we don't think you'll have bad things to say, unless the worst thing you'll say is that it wasn't for me. And that's okay. We can live with that.
So all of there in Twitter link for if you're joining late. My name is Jessica Hammond-Graff. I'm the Senior Associate Athletic Director at UMBC, and we're chatting today with Vince Pearson, the Manager of Diversity and Inclusion at Minor League Baseball. If you have any questions or want to know more about Vince, please feel free. Where is it? Right there. Please feel free to tweet at 3 Pillar Academy at America East, and I will, if I see any questions pop up, I will fire away. So, Vince, I'm going to, lob the first one out there. Why is diversity and inclusion important in these professional settings and or in other sports venues?
I think that, when you think about diversity and inclusion, and it's kind of those two words themselves have become they've become so watered down. It's almost the safe way to talk about anything that's different. But if you think about our society at large, we're becoming a more diverse society, both in terms of racial representation and gender representation in roles that are more senior. So we're becoming a society that is more prepared to engage at a professional level, but I'm not sure that the professional settings have kept up with the demographic shift that society is seeing. So it's important because we have almost a built-in duty at the professional level, no matter what your business is, but especially in sports, we almost have a civic and social responsibility to be members of the communities that support us. And in order to do that and be good, effective members of our communities, it's important that we understand the needs. It's important that we provide more than just our entertainment, because, sports, I won't say takes a lot from community, but the investment that it comes from its fans and from the municipal body is usually pretty large. And I think that comes with a built-in responsibility to serve as well. And so it's important because really, as our workplaces become more diverse, both racially and gender, and really across religion and all different types of differences, there's sexual orientation, there's appearance, all together, there's background completely. To remain effective organizations, we have to be able to manage across differences. It's important beyond communication that we understand how to perhaps disagree and still be effective. So diversity and inclusion brings a lot of these topics to the forefront. It puts us in a position where we have to address them, but it makes cultural competency a leadership competency. So that way, understanding the individuals and the people that you're working with and for becomes a measure of your leadership. And, it only helps us build more inclusive organizations. And then that just allows everyone to be more comfortable. And that's when productivity typically skyrockets.
Yeah, absolutely. When you create an environment that people feel comfortable to bring their whole self to work, then they're really going to flourish and buy in and be loyal to the company.
Absolutely. And, it's no secret that so with college sports, right, we think about March Madness, productivity declines unbelievably during March Madness. And that's one that's expected, and there's so much research on it. But if we looked at productivity across the board, it's been on a steady decline, and that's because I would think that that's because people aren't in a position to bring their full selves to work, and there's baggage that you have to bring, and there's discomfort, and you have to be concerned about stereotype threat. Am I perpetuating a stereotype because of whatever it is that I like to do? Now I'm worried about that rather than my job, and that just naturally creates conflict.
Right. And you're hesitant to engage in conversation because how much do you want to share about your life or not share about your life? And then that limits your ability to connect and build those relationships. And as you mentioned, needing those to be a leader and or to just enjoy your work environment. If you come to work every day and close the door because you're fearful, what if I have kids? What if I'm gay? What if? And, you know, how is that treated or embraced in your work environment will really take its toll on your well-being.
Absolutely. And that's what I mean when I say, you know, diversity and inclusion have almost become terms that have lost their impact, because we hear it and we think of sexual orientation or race or gender or religion and difference and things that we just do not want to talk or deal with. Can't we just get our work done? But we don't think about comfort or productivity or apathy and how these things can lead to, you know, if I don't feel included or if I don't feel a part of or accepted by my organization, there's no way I can be passionate about it. So I think that if you look at empowerment, when you think of inclusion and engagement versus, you know, touchy topics and things we don't want to get into, and do we have to discuss these things at work? I think it goes a long way towards, like you said, creating comfort for people on an individual level. And then that just helps the organizational community become that much better.
Absolutely. So what advice would you have for, you know, our student athletes that are listening and might be struggling in their space or on their team, that maybe they don't feel quite as included, or they want to start some sort of social change on their team or a cultural shift to be more open?
I would say for student athletes to start in your locker rooms. You know, I look at every student athlete as a leader in their own right. Be it, you know, freshman coming on the scene for the first time or a senior that's on their way out. You're a leader, and you have a responsibility to contribute to the culture in your locker room. And I think that goes a really long way, because, I mean, how great is it to, you almost get this, that's your own environment. You're in charge of it. It's all on you. And the level of morale, be it high or low, is going to be a reflection of the investment of the whole. So I think every student athlete has to take serious their responsibility for the culture that they have in their locker room. And if they sense that someone's uncomfortable, or if they themselves are uncomfortable, then, you know, how are you going? What's the next step going to be? Because I don't think that you can effectively perform if you're finding yourself uncomfortable in your locker room, uncomfortable around your teammates and comrades. So I would say definitely start there, own and accept your responsibility for that culture in the locker room. And then once you figure that out as a unit, then individually, if you've got something that you're really passionate about, a social cause that you're really passionate about, you will immediately have brothers and sisters around you who will buy in. And even if they don't, I think that's one of the biggest things about communication. I won't even say diversity and inclusion. The biggest thing about communication is that we've forgotten how to disagree, and it be okay. You know, we can't have constructive conversation where there are two opposing views. It turns into, you know, World War III. Right.
Or it's on Twitter.
What's that?
Or it's on Twitter.
Right. And then it elevates and it just goes from there. And next thing you know, it takes on a life of its own.
Right.
And, you know, I think that society's become polarized in that way. But I think it's on the individual, back to that locker room, we don't have to bring those societal views or that same type of process to the way that we deconstruct issues in a locker room. So I think, you know, student athletes have a really great opportunity to address culture in a unique way, because they're going to spend so much time together. They're all in leadership positions, and you can do it privately. I would recommend that you definitely do that. And then as you perfect that, okay, now let's look outside and see where we can create some real impact for our communities, for issues that are important to us.
And how is minor league baseball connecting with your communities?
Well, we do so in you know, we have to be really creative. I think that's one of the best things about minor league baseball is, you know, it's part of our business model to become a member of your community. So we've done a great job. We see a lot of military appreciation nights. We see Latin Heritage Nights. This year we launched a Hispanic platform that parallels our It's Fun to Be a Fan, Es Divertido Ser Un Fan. And please forgive me if my enunciation was incorrect because I am a work in progress. But that allows us to now be intentional about going in and engaging the Hispanic community, because there's plenty of hints that say this community loves baseball.
Sure.
But what we see is that that's not reflected in our attendance. Mm-hmm. So how can we be more intentional about going out, learning more, creating an environment that is more welcoming for the Hispanic community, and then inviting them in? And I think those two steps of learning and then creating and then inviting, I think are so important, because, you know, a lot of times with your typical Latin Heritage Night, it's let's do a lot of things that we assume would attract this community, you know, smack it on our promotional calendar and then watch them walk in, rather than going in, you know, actually engaging leaders within that community and saying, how can we do better? And then, you know, there's very few who will say, look, we don't want to have that conversation with you. Once you approach in the correct way, it's going to be such a learning experience, and you'll stand to benefit. So I think, you know, minor league baseball and our teams have to become members of the community before we can even launch in a market.
Yeah.
So, you know, for us, it's just expanding beyond where we are now and continuing to grasp more of our communities. And that's what we're positioning ourselves to do.
So you guys, as you're reaching out into the communities, is there a social justice component that you guys are being mindful of and how you're interacting?
So there is no formal social justice component for our initiative now. But I think that, you know, as you become intertwined with these communities in a professional setting, businesses, sports especially, but business altogether, you have to be comfortable connecting yourself to the issues that are important to those communities as well. And I think back to the Charleston shooting, for example, at Mother Emanuel. We had the Charleston River Dogs who were there, and they immediately jumped on, and, you know, there were donations that were made. There was recognition at the ballpark. They brought some of the surviving family members out. And, you know, I don't want to say that, you know, you never want to jump on tragedy and let that be your way in, right? Because that is certainly not at all genuine. But once you build a genuine connection, there's no way that you can ignore those things. And I think that, you know, that is prayerfully, that's a once in a lifetime or once ever type of incident where we will never have to worry about something like that again. But even smaller issues of social justice, and, you know, you could turn on ESPN and probably hear about something new at this point. If your organization attempts to become more representative of communities of color, for example, but you're not taking into consideration the challenges or issues within those communities, then at some point you're going to have a clash that you're going to have to address. So I think that's almost the piece of becoming more diverse without becoming actually inclusive. So I think that for organizations, if you don't inherently, well, the social justice piece is inherently connected. If you don't intentionally take that on and genuinely take it on, then you're going to set yourself up for a setback at some point in your initiative.
Because you don't want it to just be, oh yeah, we'll just do this thing and we'll just go through the motions, and there's no there, like you said, there's no genuine connection. Everybody feels it, and it comes across that way.
Right. And it seems as if society now, you know, back to Twitter and social media, you'll get called out really quick now. If it even smells like it might be fake, someone's going to sniff it out. And once you get called out, now you've got a lot of cleaning up to do. I mean, I don't know the last time we went a month without some major corporation having to apologize for an ad. And that's just showing the nature of, you know, just how our society is shifting. And, you know, frankly, having diverse and inclusive business practices really become a built-in protection from some of the things that might get you in trouble. It might cost you money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And as much as you don't want to think about the bottom line, or you don't want the bottom line to drive your organization, sometimes you have to be mindful of it and how your actions are impacting that.
Absolutely. And, you know, mentioning the bottom line is, you know, coming into this position, I completely understood that this is a business initiative. But at the same time, I think that it's, again, back to the social justice piece being inherently connected. There's so much moral and social responsibility tied to diversity initiatives that if you're only in it for the business reason, then you'll soon find that that's not gonna carry weight throughout, because it, again, back to being genuine, you cannot create an inclusive culture in your company, in your locker room, because you think you're going to get more money. You have to really care about the culture in order to do that. And I think that applies across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to remind everybody out in Twitter land, if you want to join the conversation, feel free to tweet at America East, #3P Academy. We would love to hear from you. So Vince, as we were talking about, so we have these student athletes, they're passionate. How do they get involved with either minor league baseball, or some other role with diversity and inclusion? What advice would you give them if they wanted to follow your path?
Well, my first piece of advice would be to get involved with our field program. 2018 applications are going to open up in early 2018, probably early February. And the program for 2018 is going to run in June. We're going to shift. So we had previously done the program in St. Petersburg, Florida. We're going to shift and have it in Vero Beach, Florida this year at historic Dodger Town, which is actually, you know, while we talk about diversity and inclusion, that is sacred ground for that conversation, because it is the location where the Dodgers back in the 50s, 60s had their training camp, and they had to purchase this area because Jackie Robinson was on staff, and there were restaurants and playing fields where he just was not welcome to play. So this was their way to circumvent those challenges. They purchased the entire, it was old military barracks, but it's now sacred ground and it's beautiful. So one quick tidbit would be to get involved with the field program. You're going to learn a lot about minor league baseball. You're going to have a lot of professional development opportunities. And we do make diversity and inclusion a core component of the program as well. I think, you know, I've had conversations with a lot of students who are looking to break into a diversity role. There's not a blueprint for that. It started to become a bit more popular, but you know, if you look at the number of opportunities, I tell every student that I have the conversation with, you can't have my job. This one is mine. No, but it's becoming a major, but it's certainly not offered at a lot of schools. There may be a course. I think that, you know, and this is what I always tell students as well, if I was not in this role, I would be doing something that would allow me to be fulfilled for what I get to do in this role. So I would say get involved. I'm I'm a big brother and big brothers and big sisters of America. I've been connected with my little for a few years now. I'm a part of a mentorship group with my fraternity. I'm looking for ways to impact the community for myself. The fact that I get to do it as a profession is like, it's a bonus. So I think that if it's something that's important to you, don't wait until there's a job. Get out there and find ways to create impact. And it doesn't have to be changing the world. It can be changing one person's experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really great advice. So one final question for you this evening. What's next for minor league baseball diversity initiative? What do you have on the horizon that you're looking forward to implementing or see come to fruition?
Well, I have to tell you, we have a very engaged diversity committee within our office and within the industry. We're actually looking forward to composing an external committee. So I say that to say that I could get a phone call that spurs some great conversation in the middle of the night in March, and we have a brand new program by that fall. That's the type of support that we have and the energy we have behind it. In 2018, one of the things I'd like to do is focus efforts a bit more on education and culture, really starting to invest in building cultural competency, again, as a leadership competency, not just for when we're having the conversation about diversity, but in general. I'd like to see it to where at some point there's a tie-in to your bonuses even, and not just in the office at minor league baseball, but to where it's considered for our 160 to say, there should be cultural components to reviews for your staff. And not to put an anvil over anyone's head and dare them to, jump or anything, but just to show that we're investing in this beyond our marketing efforts, which we certainly have, because we have every premier event that we have now at the minor league level, we have diversity conversations and events. And I tell you, I've opened the RSVP list for our Moving Diversity Forward is what it's called at baseball winter meetings. And registration is 50% full in a matter of 36 to 48 hours. So the industry's hungry for this knowledge, and I think it's just feeding it to them in the correct way of understanding that this is a journey. So being prepared, both from your toolkit and from an experiential standpoint, to get out and change your organizations and your approach to the community. So in 18, I'd like to focus a bit more on education and culture, and then obviously continue to build on and perfect the programs that we have in place.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, Vince, hopefully one of our America East student athletes will be by your side, helping you implement some of those initiatives coming for the next year. At this time, I think we're going to wrap up. Vince, thank you again for joining us for the America East 3-Pillar Academy. We really appreciate your insight and sharing with us a little bit more about what you do and how our students can get involved with diversity and inclusion, and especially at the minor league baseball.
Absolutely. It was truly a pleasure. I love doing these types of activities. So, keep me in mind for the future. In America East, I'll be looking for your applications for field and any internship that comes out from the minor league level. I'm looking forward to staying in touch.
Great. Thank you. And once again, I'm Jessica Hammond-Graff. I'm the Senior Associate Athletic Director at UMBC, and looking forward to connecting with everyone at the next one in April. Take care. Bye.